What's inside of you. Now, one should not ignore the overarching agenda of this particular text in regards to the demoniac and the woman with the issue of blood and Jairus' daughter, because the Bible allows us to be privy to Jesus doing something remarkable. He does not discriminate between the Jew and the Gentile, but he does not discriminate against them. Both are healed and transformed. I don't have time to go into the long historical, educational aspect and cultural aspect and the laws that God ascribed to the Jews. But we must understand that the Jewish people, the beloved people of God, the chosen nation of God, were people who lived a clean lifestyle. Clean, not dealing with germs, but clean in essence of their lives, being dedicated in every aspect. They were ascetic, A-S-C-E-T-I-C. That means they dedicated their lives to God in devotion. That means they did not eat pork. They lived according to the Levitical law and the Deuteronomy. They lived according to those particular laws that were ascribed in those particular books. And so it's important that they lived kosher lifestyles. They did not combine certain meats and dairy and seafood with certain things. They were so particular and persnickety concerning their whole lifestyle. Their worship was different. Their devotion to God was different. And that set them aside. Whereas it differed from the Gentiles. But Jesus does something remarkable as aforementioned. And he shows us the healing of a woman with the issue of blood and a demoniac. So the rules of each society are irrelevant to Jesus because he demolishes the demoniac's isolation. Many of us are dealing with situations that cause us to be isolated from where we are. Sometimes, young women, we are in a place we don't understand what's going on with us physiologically. We don't understand what's going on with us relationship-wise. And our relationships, if you are connected to a man that is dogmatic, who preys on your emotions and causes you, it talks negatively to you, it will cause you to be in a place of isolation. And that's a very dangerous place, because when you are in a place of isolation, that is a form of abuse. Verbal abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse. Some people have been acquainted with physical abuse. And these controllers, the characteristics of a controller is to isolate you and to back you away from your support system. So Satan strategically allow places, some of us allow stuff to happen, and we know we have no business dealing with stuff. God gives you warning. I heard yesterday, I saw a former church member of ours, and I saw her daughter, and she was on the phone. She was like, man, my daughter is talking about her boyfriend has a gun, and he got a hammer, and he's trying to kill her. So you should have known before you get that far that some stuff you need to heed the warning sign. Touch somebody and say, heed the warning. Some stuff you could have avoided had you paid attention and had the courage and not been so desperate, housewife. I appreciate the next time I come. Some of us are so desperate because we are not comfortable in our skin for whatever reason, that we do not want to be by ourselves, so we'll put up with half of something instead of dealing with being alone. That's a problem. That's a problem, because in essence, it's only an abortion that's taking place where the enemy is trying to kill the anointing that's in you, trying to attack you. And each phase of the relationship that is not for you tears away at the woman that God is cultivating you to be. So isolation is dangerous. You ought to be able to understand the importance. The Bible says where there's unity, there is strength. In unity is strength. Let me tell you, it's one of the worst things you can do is be isolated and be outside of the fold. Anytime of prey wants to come after you. He comes after the weakest one, the one that is not strong enough to run with the pack. Isolation is dangerous. Jesus deals with the demoniac's isolation, and he honors the ritually unclean, and he deals with the dead. Now, the Jews did not deal with the dead bodies because they understood that it made them unclean. And anytime there are several characteristics of what unclean was considered. A woman being on her menstrual cycle was considered to be unclean. I'm in a New Testament scripture class, and we learned that if a man was to ejaculate, that was a sign of being unclean. And so each form, if a woman gives birth, that's another sign of being unclean. So what happens is, if you go through your period of uncleanness, you would have to go take a mikvah. And a mikvah is an immersion in a pool. And so that's where we derive baptism from the Jewish tradition of the mikvah. So Jesus goes beyond the societal laws, and he defies the law because he is the law in manifestation, and he deals with each one of their problems and their issues. And so Jairus, in our text, we find out that Jairus is perplexed because he has a problem. Anybody ever had a problem that causes you to be perplexed? Jairus, a leader. Can you imagine? Jesus wasn't popular during this day. His teaching was very unconventional. He came to take away the first and establish the second, and they were wondering, what authority are you coming in? And so Jesus was not popular, although he was doing a lot of miracles and healings and going against the Sabbath tradition of healing. And so his message was not popular. He was not liked. He had a lot of haters. The Bible lets us know that Jairus, a man of the synagogue, a leader, was dealing with a very perplexing and dire situation. His situation was so perplexing that when he sees Jesus, the text says that he falls to his knees. Check this out. He's a religious person that is not in the position to really be for Jesus, but his situation is so dire that the very thing that he hated, he had to fall and worship. That ought to be an indication to some people right there. There's some people that are hating on you, but God's going to anoint you to the point he's going to cause a situation to hit them, and they're going to have to come and fall, and they need what's inside of you. I dare you to tell somebody, put your hand on yourself and say, the world needs what's inside of me. Oh, yes they do. What's inside of you is getting ready. I feel the Holy Ghost in this place tonight. What's inside of you, God's getting ready to put it on display. Who am I talking to tonight? That's why you've been dealing with what you've been having to deal with, because it's all a culmination for your premiere. God is getting ready to set a platform for you to be presented. Somebody, anybody, everybody, open up your mouth and shout it. He falls to his feet and he says to Jesus, my little daughter lieth at the point of death. He says, I pray thee come and lay thy hands on her, that she may be healed, and she shall live. Jairus is desperate despite the unpopularity of Jesus amid the religious sector. This text deals with the father's desire, number one, to save his daughter, and the difficulty associated with her condition and his position as a father. So Jairus, despite of his political and societal affluence, he is desperate and he is helpless. Jesus goes with him, and he is en route to Jairus' house. And here is the intercalation that I mentioned earlier of the insertion of the woman with the issue of blood. Then while they are in transit to Jairus' house, Jesus is confronted with the woman with the issue of blood. I'm not going to really focus too much on this particular text or part of the text, but I do want to stop here and say the interesting part about this is the woman who is unclean takes a very interesting risk. She is unclean, and any person that dealt with an uncleanness had to announce that they were unclean. And can you imagine everybody having to know I'm a fornicator, I'm a liar, and you having to announce it? We already know some of y'all liars. We already know some of y'all got problems with stealing. We already know. But can you imagine having to be humiliated for 12 Great Depression now. Can you imagine not getting no Medicaid, not getting no Medicare to try to stop yourself from hemorrhaging and bleeding? Can you imagine how tired and worn she was? Women, you know how we get during our time of the month. We get lethargic, we get pain, we get irritable. Can you imagine the desperation that this woman has to deal with? But she chooses to make a risk. She risks being ostracized. She risks, and throughout the crowd, you know, wherever somebody giving out something, there's going to be a lot of, well, fill in the blank. There's going to be a lot of people hungry, thirsty, begging for something. She presses her way despite her condition. Can I put a pause there and tell some believers tonight, whatever you're going through, it does not matter what your situation is. I want to prophesy to 10 of you and let you know you're going to stay in the press. Look at somebody beside you, say, whatever you do, stay in the press. That's another preach right there. Don't you give up, but you got to press toward the mark of the press. Oh, God. Anybody in here feel like pressing? Oh, church used to say, believe I'll run on and see what the end's going to be. I feel like preaching. You got to understand here, she presses and she goes through the people despite her societal status. And I feel like God's getting ready to change about 30 people's status in here tonight. Yes. I preach before my status is changing. I dare you prophesy to yourself and say, as of tonight, my status is changing. I don't care what you left at home. I came to tell you about this time tomorrow, your status is changing. She goes through the crowd and she presses and she touches the hem of his garment. The reason she touches the hem of him, the H-E-M of H-I-M, is because there's a border around his hem that was blue, that was symbolic of healing. She knew exactly the place to touch on Jesus. Don't you? Oh, God, that's revelation to us here. We got to understand the exact place to touch Jesus to get what we need. The woman of God touches the hem of his garment. Her need is so powerful. Her need and her faith to go beyond society pull something out of Jesus. I came to tell you, when was the last time that your worship, your need poured virtue out of God? Yeah, we got to get to the point where we are so desperate for Jesus that we put a demand on him. Did y'all hear what I said? We don't need to put a demand on the personality of a preacher, but we need to put a demand on the miracle working power of Jesus. That's when we can see the signs and wonders that will follow them that believe. That's when we'll be able to see the sons and daughters that will prophesy. And God is getting ready to send an outpour, a dispensational outpour. God, I feel like preaching too early here. God is getting ready to send a dispensational outpour like none other. There's revival that's getting ready to hit this nation globally and internationally because there are people who are dealing with too many issues, and that's why you've had to go through what you've been going through, because God has anointed you for such a time as this. We must understand here that she presses and she receives her healing and Jesus makes her whole. Bible says she deals with this issue for 12 years. And many young women who have experienced various issues at early ages look for someone to reach out to. And the enemy will present something that looks good, but it's not necessarily good for you. You gotta be careful how you are when you are vulnerable, women of God, that you don't reach out to any old him, but you reach out to the right him. Yes, you gotta be careful how in isolation, that you don't get in isolation, but you gotta be careful how you get involved and entangled and ensnared and get caught up with situations, so you cannot reach out to people who are unauthorized to handle you, because some people see where you're going. Some people know who you are, and they are just waiting for you to fail. They're counting on you to fall. They're waiting. They say she's just like her grandmama. Yeah, she's just like that family. They're never going to be anything. And so some people have already pronounced your demise. Let's put a pin there and hold on to that one. We understand here that she is dealing with the issue, and Jesus, he attests to, he heals and makes whole. He pronounces wholeness in her situation. As soon as Jesus heard, while they are en route, and he addresses her need and heals her. Check this out. As soon as Jesus is dealing with this, there comes a person that comes to notify Jairus that his daughter has transitioned to death. So before, if we remember in the text, she is almost near death. And while they're in transit to go heal her and deal with her, there's an interruption to her miracle. Check this out here. Every interruption and every delay is not a denial, but God uses his timing. Yes, he uses his time. He is not limited to our kairos or our clock time, but he functions within and without of time. And so what God does is Jesus attends to the woman who pulls on him and puts a demand on him. And then Jairus is witnessing. Jairus is already desperate. He's already in a position of helplessness, but he is able to see the woman's faith despite his situation. And when he receives the news that his daughter is dead, Jesus immediately speaks to his situation and says she's not dead. He deals with her. He deals with him. Jesus says to him, he says, don't be fearful. And he tells him to not be fearful. He speaks to his fear, because the truth of the matter is sometimes we are fearful even in Christendom. God has spoken something, and when the situation becomes the antithesis or the opposite of what God says, we get fearful. We get afraid. Fear, false evidence appearing real. We feel like it's impossible and that it will not happen. But Jesus tells Jairus, believe, and he talks to his fear and confirms for him. And so the Bible lets us know that when they get there and Jesus deals and confronts with his fear, that Jesus suffered no man to follow them except Peter, James, and John. In this season, women of God, men of God, believers, it's imperative that you watch who you link up with. It's imperative who you allow to come in your space. It's imperative who you tell your vision to, who you tell your dream to, because everybody is not for you. Ooh, rewind, play. Everybody is not for you. They'll smile in your face all the while they're trying to take your place. What do we call them? We call them? Yes, we do. There's some people that are praise and dance right on your road, but they'll try to get some Google dust. They be trying to pull you down. They'll prophesy against your season and exactly what God, they'll prophesy against your, God's getting ready to elevate you to a different place, all because they're hating on you and they want to see you fail. Be careful who you allow to travel with you, because there are people who want to sabotage and professional vision attackers. The Bible lets us know that Jesus gets into the place, he gets to the room, and he deals with the people that are there. During that time, they had professional mourners, people who were paid to cry, paid to have a pity party, people who are professional at what they do. You know, we got professional liars, we got professional fakers, professional all this. Anything you need, misery loves company. You can find a professional, whatever it is, whenever you're going through, whatever you're going through. Jesus stands up there. He asks them, what is going on? He speaks to the commotion and the chaos, and he puts out every unbeliever. He puts out every hypocrite. Hypocrite is the word that comes from the Greek that means etymologically actor and pretender. And so in the church, we got a lot of actors and pretenders, and Jesus puts them out. I can't tell you, every person that's been a hypocrite and an actor, it's time for you to cancel their performance and put them out. Oh my God, Jesus deals with the situation. He puts out all the unbelievers, he puts out the fake and the phony, and he begins to deal with the situation in hand. He only has people around him that are going to believe and that know what he's getting ready to do. He has her mother and her father there. Notice in the text that the mother is not even named, but only mentioned. But she's there to witness the miracle that Jesus is getting ready to do. Text says that Jesus goes there and allows them to know she's not dead. She's only in a sleep. What are you saying here? Jesus, I'm looking at her. Her heart memory is gone. She is dead. And what many of us will look at, we will call it an anastasis, a debilitating state, a comatose state. We will call it the end. We will bring in the morticians and pronounce the final rites. But Jesus looks at her and he says, she is just asleep. I want to talk to you, and I'm about to ride out of here in just a few minutes. There's some people that have seen you, women of God, in your situation, and they've already brought the bad news. They've already stopped the procession of Jesus and said, there's no need of even coming because they're already dead. There's no hope of surviving. There's no hope of recovering. But I came to tell everybody under the sound of my voice that your condition is not your conclusion. Who am I talking to tonight? I want you to understand that Jesus sees her in her situation. He sees her as sleep. He is the one that has the power to decree a thing. He's the one that stepped out on nothing and made it something. And so Jesus, the one who has the authority to see a dead thing, he sees it and pronounces it only as sleep. I came to tell you, it does not matter what situation you've been in. It does not matter where you have been found. But you're not limited to the last place of failure. And you're not limited to the last thing that people know you of. But I came to tell you, God, I feel like preaching here, that God is getting ready to allow you to get up from the dead. And the Bible, yes, God, the Bible lets us know that Jesus, who is life, he is the resurrection. He looks to her. He sees a young girl lying there, and she is asleep. But God speaks to her, and he says, she is asleep. I came to tell you tonight that many of you have been pronounced dead. Many of you have been pronounced flatline. But I came to tell you tonight, it's not what it looks like. Jesus looks at her and he says, Talita Kumi. I came to tell you, every place that's in your life that's been dead, Jesus is getting ready to speak in the Aramaic. He is getting ready to speak and cause your situation to come from death to life. Your situation appears dead, but I hear the Lord say, arise, arise. And so the Bible lets us know, as previous in the text, that Jairus' name means awaken. There is a link to Jairus awakening and what the miracle that Jesus performs. Isn't it ironic that the woman with the issue of blood dealt with the issue for 12 years, yet the young woman, the Bible says, is 12 years old. The woman with the issue of blood deals with the 12-year ailment, and her story connects her to a 12-year-old girl. It's interesting because of physiologically, the typical age of menses is at the age of 12. And so God shows a dichotomy here that the enemy tries to stop the two women at two stages of life. The enemy will try to stop you at the age of 12, who represents youth. And then the enemy will try to stop you as a mature woman. But God is so masterful